Welcome to our channel. Are you ready to embark on thrilling adventures across the cosmos, encounter mysterious alien civilizations, and explore the unknown depths of space? If so, you've come to the right place. Subscribe and join our community of fellow sci-fi enthusiasts who love diving into epic tales and futuristic explorations. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an exciting new story. We want to hear from you. Leave a comment below sharing your favorite sci-fi moment, or let us know what kind of adventures you'd like to see next. Your feedback helps us create the stories you crave. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to journey beyond the stars as we begin our latest saga.
The mining colony of Torvex 7 sprawled under the harsh glare of twin suns. Its jagged structures rising like scars from the crimson soil. Once a thriving outpost for rare mineral extraction, it had long since devolved into a cesspool of corruption, where fortunes were made at the cost of countless lives. To Eliard Vennon, a seasoned officer of the Earth Alliance Defense Corps, the place reeked of desperation and decay. He tightened the seals on his armored suit, its black plating absorbing the oppressive heat as he stepped off the shuttle. A wiry, green-skinned alien with bulbous eyes greeted him with an unsettling eagerness. "Welcome to Torvex 7. Commander," chirped the figure, bowing low. "I am Frix, your liaison. The mining consortium is honored to have you here." Eliard barely acknowledged the alien's words, his dark eyes scanning the bustling landing pad. The smell of scorched metal and unfiltered exhaust lingered in the air, mixing with the distant hum of automated machinery. He adjusted his stance, the servos in his boots compensating for the colony's higher gravity. "Spare me the pleasantries, Frix," Eliard said, his voice clipped. "Show me the mining operation. I don't intend to stay longer than necessary." The alien's smile faltered but quickly returned. "Of course, Commander. But before we proceed, perhaps you'd like to see something unique. A specimen of great interest, rarely shown to outsiders." Eliard's brow furrowed. He despised diversions, especially in places like this, where every second seemed to drag against his patience. "I'm not here for entertainment," he growled. "Oh. But this is no ordinary distraction," Frix insisted, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have an Astral Vanguard, one of the last. I assure you, she's quite docile now, thanks to our containment measures. A truly magnificent creature." The word Vanguard made Eliard pause. His years of service had taught him many things about the galaxy's inhabitants. But the Astral Vanguard, massive, sentient beings once thought extinct, were spoken of only in whispers. They had been legends of the Andromeda armed giants whose very presence reshaped the tides of battle and the course of civilizations. And now, one of them was here. Against his better judgment, curiosity pulled at him. "Fine," he said, his tone begrudging. "Show me." Frix led him through a labyrinth of dimly lit tunnels carved into the planet's rocky surface. The deeper they went, the cooler the air became, a stark contrast to the scorching heat above. Eliard's instincts screamed caution as they neared a massive chamber. The faint hum of energy fields vibrated through the walls, a sign of advanced containment systems. When they entered, Eliard stopped in his tracks. Towering between black metal columns was a figure that defied explanation. She stood nearly 25 feet tall, her skin a shimmering violet hue that seemed to ripple like liquid starlight. Her hair, black as the void, cascaded around her like a dark halo, barely concealing her form. But it was her eyes that struck Eliard most, pure white with the faintest lavender glow, devoid of pupils yet filled with an intelligence that pierced through him. "Magnificent, isn't she?" Frix beamed. mistaking Eliard's stunned silence for all. It took months to subdue her. The profit potential is immense. Profit. Eliard spat the word as though it burned his tongue. He stepped closer. Anger bubbling beneath his stoic exterior. This isn't a specimen. It's slavery. The creature's eyes shifted, locking onto Eliard's. In them, he saw not rage, nor fear, but sorrow, a weariness born of endless suffering. Against all odds, she spoke. Her voice a deep, melodic tone that reverberated through the chamber. You are not like the others, she said. They look at me with greed or fear. You look at me with anger. But not at me. Her words lingered in the air as Eliard's heart clenched. He knew. In that moment, his mission on Torvex 7 had changed forever. The encounter with Kaelithra haunted Eliard long after he left her chamber. Her mournful eyes and the melodic weight of her words stirred something deep within him. This wasn't just another mission. Another assessment of a crumbling mining colony. This was a moral line he couldn't cross, one he couldn't ignore. Back in his assigned quarters, Eliard pored over the schematics of Torvex 7. Using his combat suit's advanced systems to analyze weaknesses in the colony's infrastructure. The layout was a maze of tunnels and reinforced chambers. But its security wasn't impenetrable. The facility's reliance on a centralized power grid created vulnerabilities he could exploit. All he needed was a plan, and an accomplice whose strength defied imagination. But doubt lingered in his mind. Could he truly trust Kaelithra? Or was she another prisoner warped by hatred and desperation? The thought of her haunted him as he replayed her words, "You look at me with anger. But not at me." On his next visit to Kaelithra's chamber, Eliard approached cautiously. His movements deliberate. The guards had grown accustomed to his presence. And they assumed his interest in the chamber was purely structural. Their complacency suited his needs. Kaelithra watched him from the shadows of her containment. Her towering form bound by humming energy chains. Despite her confinement, her presence was undiminished. She tilted her head slightly as he approached. Her glowing lavender eyes narrowing in curiosity. "You return. Little warrior," she said. Her voice rich and resonant. Carrying both skepticism and a flicker of amusement. "I need your help," Eliard said simply. Stopping just beyond the hum of her chains. His voice was low. Steady. Kaelithra's gaze lingered on him, weighing his words. "You surprise me. I thought your kind only sought to take." "My kind isn't the one that put you in chains," he retorted. His eyes flashing. "I'm here to free you. But I need to know you're willing to fight for yourself." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You would gamble your life for a creature the galaxy deems a monster." Eliard stepped closer. His hand resting just inches from the barrier of her bonds. "I don't see a monster. I see a survivor. And together, we can remind this galaxy what strength really means." Kaelithra fell silent for a moment. The weight of his words settling over her. Finally, she nodded. "Tell me your plan, little warrior." Over the next few days, Eliard and Kaelithra worked together to craft their escape. Each visit brought new risks and new insights. While Kaelithra shared her knowledge of the facility's layout, gleaned from conversations with careless guards, Eliard mapped out their vulnerabilities. "The chains are powered by the central grid," Eliard explained during one of their whispered conversations. "The facility undergoes routine maintenance every week, shutting down non-essential systems for 3 minutes. That's our window." Kaelithra's violet skin shimmered faintly in the chamber's dim light. 3 minutes won't be enough to escape this colony. It will be if I take out their backup generators," Eliard replied. His voice sharp with conviction. "Once the chains fail, Your strength will be more than enough to breach the outer walls. Her gaze softened. Her skepticism giving way to something else, hope. You think 3 minutes can undo years of suffering? No, Eliard said firmly. His eyes locking onto hers. But it's a start. As the days turned into nights, their bond grew. Eliard began to see beyond Kaelithra's imposing size and formidable strength, glimpsing the remnants of a proud civilization that had been reduced to ashes. Kaelithra, in turn, began to trust him, recognizing his resolve as more than fleeting bravery. During one visit, Eliard noticed faint markings on Kaelithra's skin, intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer like constellations. He reached out instinctively, his hand brushing the barrier between them. These markings, he murmured. Are they part of your culture? Kaelithra's gaze followed his hand. They are our story, she said quietly. Each line marks a victory, a loss, a love. They are all that remains of what we were. Eliard's heart ached at the weight of her words. Then we'll make sure there's more to add. Director Xorath, the cold and calculating head of security at Torvex 7, prided himself on his ability to sniff out disloyalty. As days passed, his instinct warned him that something was amiss. The colony's newest guest, Eliard Vennon, had a reputation as a by-the-books officer. Yet his actions didn't align with his supposed mission. Routine inspections of the mining operations were perfunctory at best. And his repeated visits to the Titan's chamber raised red flags. Commander Vennon's movements are curious. Xorath mused aloud, his scaled fingers tapping against the control console in his private quarters. His amber eyes glowed with suspicion as he reviewed surveillance footage of Eliard. The human moved with purpose, his every step calculated. But it wasn't the casual arrogance of an inspector, it was the focus of someone with a plan. Xorath turned to his lieutenant, a wiry, sharp-featured alien named Drathix. Increase monitoring of the Titan's chamber, and send additional guards to the lower levels. Quietly, Drathix hesitated. Director, if we reassign too many guards, do not question me. Xorath snapped, his voice like the hiss of steam escaping under pressure. Vennon thinks he's clever, but I will remind him who truly controls this colony. Under Xorath's orders, additional surveillance equipment was discreetly installed around the chamber where Kaelithra was held. Guards were rotated with stricter protocols, and sensor scans of the facility were expanded to detect anomalies in power usage. Xorath had learned from experience that subterfuge often left a trail, however faint. His efforts bore fruit sooner than expected. On the third night of increased monitoring, a junior technician burst into Xorath's office, trembling. Sir, we've detected unauthorized scans of the facility's security systems, originating from Commander Vennon's quarters. Xorath's scaled lips curled into a predatory smile. So, the good commander isn't here to inspect mining operations after all. Excellent. Let him think he's ahead. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his clawed fingers. Prepare a team to intercept him, and ensure that the Titan is restrained more securely. But, Director, the technician stammered. Her current bindings are already at maximum containment capacity. If we... Xorath's smile vanished. Do it. And if she resists, increase the energy output until she begs for mercy. The technician nodded quickly and left, leaving Xorath to savor the unfolding game. You underestimate me, Vennon, he murmured to himself. Your noble ideals are no match for the cold reality of power. Deep in her chamber, Kaelithra felt the changes immediately. The hum of the energy chains grew louder. their force intensifying. The pain was excruciating, sending jolts through her body each time she shifted. Her once vivid violet skin dimmed slightly under the strain, her strength dwindling. When Eliard visited again, she noticed his sharp intake of breath as he approached. "They've increased the power," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "They know." Eliard's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking to the now overcharged chains. "Xorath suspects me," he admitted. "But he doesn't know everything. Not yet." Kaelithra studied him, her luminous lavender eyes searching his face. "If they catch you, they'll kill you. You should leave. Little warrior. Save yourself while you can." "Not a chance," Eliard replied, his tone resolute. "If they've increased the restraints, it means they're scared. That's something we can use." Despite the tension, Kaelithra couldn't suppress a faint smile. "Your stubbornness is admirable, if not entirely wise." Eliard stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We stick to the plan. The maintenance window is still our best shot. But we'll need to move fast. Can you hold out?" Kaelithra's eyes flickered with determination. "I've endured worse than this. I will endure for freedom." As the maintenance window approached, Xorath's paranoia escalated. He began issuing contradictory orders, increasing patrols in some areas while leaving others suspiciously understaffed. To his subordinates, it seemed as though the director was unraveling. But Xorath knew exactly what he was doing. "I want him to think he's winning," Xorath explained to Drathix. "Let him move freely in the shadows he believes I've overlooked. The moment he steps into my trap, we'll crush him, and the Titan, with one decisive blow." In the final hours before the planned escape, Xorath personally oversaw the deployment of his forces. The guards stationed near Kaelithra's chamber were replaced with elite soldiers clad in combat-grade armor. Hidden energy disruptors were installed in the surrounding tunnels, designed to incapacitate anyone attempting to tamper with the facility's systems. As Xorath reviewed the final preparations, his scaled lips curled into a self-satisfied smirk. "When this is over, I'll not only have the Titan, but a fine example to remind others of the price of defiance." The dim corridors of Torvex 7 were unusually quiet as the maintenance cycle approached. The colony's power grid, a sprawling network of cables and conduits, would soon enter its brief shutdown for routine diagnostics. To most of the colony's residents, it was just another scheduled disruption. But for Eliard Vennon and Kaelithra, it was the moment everything would change. Eliard slipped through the shadows, his combat suit's stealth systems masking his movements. The suit's internal display counted down the seconds, 5 minutes until the grid powered down. He clutched a compact device, a crude but effective disruptor he had cobbled together using scavenged parts. Its purpose was simple: to ensure the energy chains binding Kaelithra would fail the moment the power dipped. As he neared Kaelithra's chamber, his heart pounded. The risk was immense, but the thought of leaving her behind was unthinkable. He checked his surroundings one last time. No guards in sight. Yet. Kaelithra's violet eyes lit up as Eliard entered the chamber. Despite the intensifying hum of the chains and the visible strain it caused her, she managed a faint smile. "You're here," she said softly. "Always," Eliard replied, stepping to the console that controlled her restraints. "The power's about to drop. When it does, these chains will fail. But we'll only have minutes before they realize what's happening." Kaelithra nodded, her towering frame tense with anticipation. "I am ready, little warrior." The timer on Eliard's display hit 0. For a heartbeat. The entire facility went silent as the grid entered maintenance mode. The energy chains surrounding Kaelithra flickered, their hum dissipating. Eliard activated his disruptor. And with a sharp crackle, the chains collapsed. Kaelithra surged to her feet, her immense form radiating power even in the dim chamber. The markings on her skin shimmered faintly as she stretched, her muscles coiling like a predator freed from a cage. Eliard grinned. "Let's get out of here." Their victory was short-lived. The silence of the maintenance cycle shattered as alarms blared. Red lights bathing the tunnels in an ominous glow. The first wave of guards stormed into the chamber, weapons drawn. "Stop right there," barked a soldier, his voice trembling despite his bravado. "By order of Director Xorath, you're under arrest." Kaelithra stepped forward, her towering presence enough to send several guards stumbling back. Her voice was calm but laced with menace. "You will not stop me." The guards opened fire. But their weapons, designed for containment, barely fazed her. Kaelithra moved with precision, disarming the closest attackers and sending them sprawling with sweeping blows. Her movements were graceful yet terrifying, like a storm personified. Eliard, meanwhile, darted through the chaos, using his suit's agility to disable control panels and seal off access points. His voice crackled through the comlink. "Kaelithra, we need to head for the lower tunnels. That's our best shot." She nodded, scooping him up in one massive hand. "Lead the way." As they reached the lower levels, a familiar voice echoed through the corridors. "You're making a grave mistake, Vennon." Director Xorath emerged, flanked by heavily armed soldiers and an experimental energy weapon, a device crackling with destructive potential. "Grave mistakes are your specialty, Xorath." Eliard shot back, stepping in front of Kaelithra. "Enslaving sentient beings, calling it profit. You're a disgrace." Xorath sneered, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "And you're a fool. This ends now." Before Eliard could respond, Xorath fired the weapon. A blinding surge of energy ripped through the air, forcing Kaelithra to shield Eliard with her massive body. The blast struck her shoulder, leaving a scorch mark but failing to stop her. Kaelithra's eyes blazed with fury. "You cannot break me, Xorath." With a roar, she lunged forward, grabbing a nearby support column and hurling it toward Xorath's forces. The makeshift projectile smashed into the soldiers, scattering them like ragdolls. Xorath, barely avoiding the impact, stumbled back, his confident facade cracking. Eliard seized the moment, tossing an explosive charge toward the remaining guards. The blast filled the tunnel with smoke and debris, creating the opening they needed. "Go!" Eliard shouted, motioning for Kaelithra. With the tunnel collapsing behind them, Kaelithra carried Eliard through the winding passages, her massive strides eating up the distance. Security forces scrambled to catch up, but the destruction left in their wake slowed them down. The exit loomed ahead, a reinforced hatch leading to the surface. Eliard activated his suit's hacking module, bypassing the lock in seconds. The hatch groaned as it opened, revealing the barren expanse of Torvex 7 under its twin moons. "We're not safe yet," Eliard warned as Kaelithra stepped onto the rocky terrain. "They'll send pursuit teams. We need to move." Kaelithra glanced at the horizon, her expression resolute. "Then let them come. I will not be caged again." As alarms blared behind them and searchlights swept across the terrain, Kaelithra and Eliard disappeared into the shadows of the mountains. Together, they had defied the odds. But the true challenge lay ahead, survival and the pursuit of freedom. The twin moons of Torvex 7 illuminated the rocky terrain as Kaelithra and Eliard Vennon raced away from the collapsing tunnels of the mining colony. Behind them, the muffled roar of explosions echoed through the night, signaling the destruction of the corridors they had left behind. The air was thick with dust and smoke, the remnants of their defiance against Director Xorath and his oppressive regime. Kaelithra moved with astonishing speed for her size, her strides devouring the uneven ground with ease. She carried Eliard close to her chest, her protective instincts sharp and unwavering. Despite her exhaustion from years of captivity and the injury to her shoulder, her grip was steady, her resolve unshaken. "They won't stop chasing us," Eliard said, his voice barely audible over the wind rushing past them. His combat suit's sensors picked up movement behind them, vehicles and aerial drones fanning out across the wasteland in pursuit. "They will try," Kaelithra replied, her voice calm but filled with an undercurrent of fury. "And they will fail." Eliard glanced back, the glint of headlights and searchlights piercing through the darkness. "They're deploying hovercrafts and gunships. We need to lose them in the terrain ahead." Kaelithra nodded, her glowing lavender eyes scanning the horizon. The barren wasteland gave way to jagged cliffs and narrow canyons, perfect for shaking off their pursuers. "Hold on, little warrior," she said, tightening her grip. "This will be rough." Kaelithra veered sharply into the canyons, her massive feet finding purchase on the loose gravel and jagged rock. The narrow paths forced the pursuing vehicles to slow down, their bulky frames struggling to navigate the tight turns. Gunships circled overhead, their searchlights crisscrossing the rocky crevices. Eliard activated his suit's cloaking system, masking their heat signatures to confuse the drones. "If we can reach the deeper ravines, their aerial units won't be able to track us," he said, guiding Kaelithra with a map projected onto his visor. Kaelithra's strength and agility proved invaluable. She leapt across a wide chasm, landing with a force that sent a small avalanche of rocks tumbling behind them, blocking one of the main paths. The sound of grinding metal and cursing soldiers echoed from the pursuing vehicles. "They're slowing," Eliard noted, checking his scanners. "But the gunships are still closing in." Kaelithra glanced upward, her eyes narrowing. "Then we'll deal with them." As the gunships closed in, one of them fired a volley of energy blasts, striking the canyon walls around Kaelithra. She shielded Eliard with her body, the explosions leaving scorch marks on her already worn skin. A low growl escaped her lips, a sound that resonated with both anger and defiance. "Eliard," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Tell me where to aim." Eliard hesitated for only a moment before pointing toward a precarious rock formation above the nearest gunship. "There," he said. "Bring it down." With a grunt of effort, Kaelithra reached for a massive boulder, her muscles straining as she hefted it above her head. With a roar, she hurled it at the formation. The impact sent a cascade of rocks tumbling down, crushing the gunship beneath a wave of debris. A fiery explosion lit up the canyon, momentarily halting the pursuit. "Impressive," Eliard muttered, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Kaelithra gave him a sidelong glance. "I'm just getting started." The remaining gunships adjusted their tactics, pulling back and focusing their fire on bottlenecking the escape routes. Eliard's suit sensors detected a buildup of energy, a sign that heavier weaponry was being deployed. "They're bringing out the big guns," he warned. "We can't stay here." Kaelithra's eyes flickered to a faint opening in the rock face ahead. "There," she said. "It leads to the open plains. Once we're there, they'll lose their advantage." Eliard nodded. Do it. Kaelithra surged forward, her strides lengthening as she barreled toward the opening. The canyon walls narrowed, the space almost too tight for her massive frame. Behind them, the pursuing forces unleashed a final barrage of fire, the explosions sending shockwaves through the ground. As they reached the mouth of the opening, Kaelithra leapt forward, clearing the gap with a burst of energy that seemed impossible given her size. She landed on the other side, her feet digging into the soft earth of the plains. Eliard's suit registered a sharp spike in his adrenaline levels as he clung tightly to her. Is it over? Kaelithra asked, her voice softer now, her breathing heavy. Eliard scanned the horizon. The gunships had stopped at the edge of the canyon, their weapons silenced. For now, he replied. They won't risk following us into the plains. Not with their fuel reserves and the unstable weather patterns here. Kaelithra allowed herself a brief moment of relief, lowering Eliard gently to the ground. Then we keep moving, she said, until we're beyond their reach. Eliard looked up at her, his face a mixture of exhaustion and admiration. You're incredible, he said simply. Kaelithra offered him a faint smile, the first genuine one he had seen from her. And you, little warrior, are braver than most. As dawn broke over the distant mountains, Kaelithra and Eliard paused to take stock of their situation. They had gained precious time, but the journey ahead would be fraught with danger. The consortium would not give up so easily. Eliard studied the map on his visor, plotting their next move. There's a hidden spaceport a few days from here, he said. It's run by smugglers who don't ask questions. If we can reach it, we'll have a chance to get off this rock. Kaelithra nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Then we move at first light. But Eliard. He turned to her, raising an eyebrow. What is it? She knelt down, her massive form lowering to meet him eye to eye. Thank you, she said softly, for seeing me as more than they did, for giving me a reason to fight. Eliard's expression softened, and he reached out, placing a hand on her enormous fingers. We fight together, he replied. Always. The rising sun painted the landscape in hues of crimson and gold as they resumed their journey, the promise of freedom and a new beginning driving them forward. The twin moons of Torvex 7 hung high in the sky, casting their silvery glow over the rocky plains. For the first time since their escape, silence enveloped Kaelithra and Eliard Vennon. The air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. They found shelter in a shallow cave, its entrance obscured by jagged rocks. Kaelithra sat at the mouth of the cave, her massive form illuminated by the pale moonlight. Despite the physical toll of their journey, her bruised skin and the faint scorch mark on her shoulder, her posture was proud, unyielding. She cradled Eliard in her hand, setting him gently on a flat rock beside her. We made it, Eliard said, his voice quiet but filled with a cautious optimism. His combat suit hummed softly as its systems worked to recharge and repair the minor damage sustained during their escape. For now, Kaelithra replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon. But they will come again. Xorath will not let us go so easily. Eliard nodded. Let him try. We'll be ready. As the moments stretched into stillness, Kaelithra's gaze softened. She looked down at Eliard, her glowing lavender eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before, hope. You risked everything to free me, she said. Why? Eliard leaned back, his dark eyes meeting hers without hesitation. Because you're worth it, he said simply. You're not just a titan. Not just a legend from some forgotten corner of the galaxy. You're you. Kaelithra tilted her head. Her expression unreadable. Then. She smiled, a true, unguarded smile. Your kind surprises me. Little warrior. You see what others cannot. You dare what others fear. Eliard chuckled, brushing dust off his suit. Guess I'm not like most humans. You are not. Kaelithra agreed. And for that, I am grateful. She reached out with a gentle hand, her enormous fingers brushing against his. For a moment, the size difference between them melted away. And all that remained was the unspoken bond they shared. Eliard pulled up a holographic map from his suit's interface, projecting it against the rocky wall. There's a hidden spaceport about 3 days' journey from here, he said, tracing a route through the plains. It's run by smugglers. They don't care who you are as long as you can pay. Kaelithra nodded, studying the map. And where do we go after that? Eliard hesitated. Anywhere but here, he said finally. The galaxy is big. Kaelithra. We'll find a place where no one can find us. Where no one can hurt you again. Her gaze shifted to the sky. Her thoughts distant. I once dreamed of such a place, she said. A sanctuary where my kind could live in peace. But that dream died long ago. Then we'll bring it back. Eliard said firmly. For you. For whatever comes next. Kaelithra's eyes flickered with emotion as she turned back to him. Whatever comes next, she echoed softly. The night deepened. And the stars blanketed the sky like countless diamonds. Kaelithra lay on her side. Her massive frame curled protectively around the cave. Eliard rested against her hand, his suit's sensors scanning for potential threats. Eliard. Kaelithra said after a long silence. Yeah. She hesitated. Her voice soft. You have given me something I thought I had lost. Something greater than freedom. Eliard raised an eyebrow. What's that? Hope, she said simply. The weight of her words settled over him. And for a moment, he was at a loss for how to respond. Finally, he stood, reaching out to place his hand against her violet skin. Hope is just the beginning. Kaelithra, he said. We'll make that dream of yours real. Together. She closed her eyes. A rare peace settling over her. Together, she whispered. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of violet and gold, Eliard and Kaelithra prepared to move. Their journey was far from over. They knew the challenges ahead would be immense, Xorath's forces, the Consortium's relentless pursuit, and the prejudices of a galaxy that saw them as outcasts. But for the first time, they faced it with a sense of purpose. Eliard secured his equipment, his mind already racing through contingency plans. Ready? He asked, looking up at Kaelithra. She smiled down at him, her massive form casting a protective shadow. With you. Little warrior, she said. Always. Together. They stepped out into the rising sun, their silhouettes merging against the horizon, a testament to the power of defiance, courage, and a bond that transcended all boundaries. And as they disappeared into the endless expanse of the plains, one thing was certain, their story was only just beginning.